Here's Lord Zedd, and he's actually probably my favorite figure of the bunch, just because he's 100% a new mold. It's still using the Action Hero base, obviously, in terms of articulation, but it is a fully new mold, and it's probably one of, if not the best Lord Zedd figure we've gotten. We did get the Super Legends one, which wasn't bad by any means, but considering the Action Hero seems to be a thing that is here to stay, it's nice to have such an iconic villain in that same sort of molding style, since the Super Legend figure is a little bit taller than the Action Hero mold. Now, it isn't without its flaws. Some of the joints are a little bit wobbly. It's not super bad to the point where I wouldn't be able to pose him, but he does like to lean forward a little bit at the slightest touch. I do like the red used. The red is a little bit deeper of a color than most past Lord Zedd figures. The Super Legends one I actually blackwashed to make him a more accurate color. But this one right out of the box is a pretty accurate red, which I really like. They got the blue veins going on through them, which I guess is semi-accurate. I think the veins in the actual show were like a clear tubing, but whatever. And of course the back, more importantly the back, is fully painted, unlike most Lord Zedd figures, even the Super Legends one. So that is always a definite plus. Plus the the silver used is a nice metallic. So it actually it looks very, very good. You do get the Z staff, which could be a little bit longer, but so be it. It's alright, but definitely my favorite of the bunch. It's a nice little Lord Zedd figure. So if you didn't get the Super Legends figure, this is definitely a nice pickup, and even if you did, like I said, it's my favorite of the bunch, and if you have a good amount of action heroes and want some more villains to add to the troop, Lord Zedd's definitely one to pick up. He's probably the easiest one to find, too. He was definitely very plentiful. No one seemed to want to pick him up. Time for the Green Ranger. Definitely going to be the target of a lot of weirdness in this line. Now, this is a legacy line meant to celebrate Mighty Morphin. And so they release a Green Ranger that celebrates Dino Thunder, which I'm perfectly fine with. I don't mind the silver stripe. I'll just say it outright. I don't mind the silver stripe. I think it's awesome kind of update to the Green Ranger design, like a power-up of sorts. So I don't mind the green stripe, or the silver stripe at all. I think it actually looks really cool and adds a lot of flair to the helmet. So I'm a huge fan of it. The silver buckle I can give or take. I mean, his whole thing was the fact that he had a gold buckle. So that I can give or take. You can fix that easily just with some gold Sharpie, just color over it. But the helmet will definitely make some people pass on this. Now, I'm not sure how difficult the heads are on these to remove. I don't think they're horribly difficult to remove, even though I can't seem to get it off. Yeah, I don't want to break it. But obviously, if you wanted the normal, if you painted this and wanted the normal head, you could have the normal Green Ranger action hero from the Super Mega Force line and just replace the heads. The heads outside of the silver stripe are completely identical. In fact, the figure itself is almost completely identical, outside of the fact that the buckle is now silver, which again you can just paint. The only difference between these figures is the gold stripes are here, which is actually something I don't think I ever really noticed on the original action hero. But the gold shield is a metallic gold paint that looks very, very pretty. And obviously the Dragon Dagger is completely painted now instead of just being crappy gold plastic. And it's actually painted quite well for such a small little weapon. I don't know how accurate the scaling is exactly. I think it should be a little bit bigger, but still. So regarding the Green Ranger, if you really want a figure that is representative of the silver stripe, then by all means pick it up. He was also rather easy to find. It's a good figure nonetheless, so for those purposes. If you don't like the silver stripe, then obviously this is a super, super easy pass, because you're going to have to sort of kit bash a couple figures together in order to get an accurate metallic Green Ranger. At that point, you might as well just pick up the Super Mega Force one and call it a day. Next up is the White Ranger, which is the only one I can safely say is an absolute pass. And the only real, well, for $12.99, I guess it's not too bad. But the only real reasoning is that if you already had the Super Mega Force one, there is hardly any difference at all. The only difference being the gold paint on the armor here is painted gold on the Legacy release. That is, even the backs are fully painted on both. The only other difference between these two figures are the Saba. Saba is painted on both sides in one release, on the Legacy release. Whereas it's just a white piece of plastic on the normal Super Mega Force one. That is the only difference in this figure. Same articulation, still gets hindered by the armor, so nothing new there. So this is the only release of the figure that I can definitely say is an absolute pass. If you picked up the normal Super Mega Force 1 already, it's a definite pass. If you didn't, I would go ahead and pick this one up just because you do get the extra paint, and it's only a couple dollars more. So it's not really all that big of a deal. So a fact we'll get to in a moment, the actual normal Rangers aren't really any different from a Super Mega Force release. So instead of releasing the Red Ranger again, but with pretty painted weapons, they decided to go ahead and release the Dragon Armor version of the Red Ranger, which is always cool. It's a design that I really like. The gold and the red work well together, and not to be one of those fans, but I always just really liked it when the Red Ranger got to wield these. So it's a figure I'm definitely glad exists to some extent. As with all of the base Rangers, I really don't like the fact that these are just plug in and that's it. I would have rather had a holster there, but that's a remnant of using the Action Hero mold. More than anything, I'm sure if they did a full new mold, they'd probably do a holster like they did with the movie figures. But included with this guy is a nicely painted power sword. Definitely really nice. You can even see the coin in there. It's nicely done there. The same Dragon Dagger that comes with the Green Ranger. So if you decided not to pick up the Green Ranger, you can still have a nicely painted Dragon Dagger for your Super Mega Force Green Ranger. And a pretty nicely painted Blade Blaster in the gun mode, which is pretty neat. Obviously not really accurate in terms of the holster, but that is alright. And the Dragon Dagger plugs in on this side, so you are good to go on this guy. Really nice. If you're a fan of this look for the Red Ranger, it's definitely a figure worth picking up. Otherwise, again, if you don't really care about this design, it's a pretty easy pass. The Super Mega Force 1 was just fine, and like I said, I'll bring them in. I'll bring him in again when we take a look at the Black Ranger next. But they're pretty much identical, and he's identical to the other Legacy releases. So if you're not a fan of the design, it's a pretty easy pass. But just to compare these weapons real quick, here is the Blade Blaster from the Legacy release compared to the Super Mega Force release. Same mold, just nicer painted, obviously. And here is the normal release of the Power Sword, which is definitely uglier looking by far since it's just red plastic. But the Legacy release is actually longer than the normal Super Mega Force release, which is definitely an interesting touch since Saba and the Dragon Dagger and stuff weren't really modified from their original version. So the Power Sword included with him is actually 100% new mold, which is definitely really cool. So if that's a thing that you want, it's another reason to pick this guy up. But really, it completely comes down to you on that one. Next up is the Black Ranger. Not too much to go over with these guys. All four of these upcoming releases for the second wave of the Legacy figures are all pretty much the same as the actual Super Mega Force Action Hero mold. So nothing too crazy. As you can see, there's no additional paint or anything like that. It is just the normal figure painted in the appropriate color with the appropriate head. So you're not really missing out on anything by not having a Legacy Red Ranger outside of the Power Sword. So again, if you want the Power Sword, that's all nicely painted. Pick up the Armored Red Ranger. But they match perfectly well. So if you want a team of normal Rangers, your Super Mega Force Red Ranger will fit in just fine. The only issue with the original Super Mega Force one is that you can't actually put a Blade Blaster on the right side because they put the hole on the wrong side. So he's going to be a little bit backwards. But that is the only flaw with this guy. But he matches perfectly well with all these upcoming Legacy releases. So not too bad if you like the Black Ranger. By all means, here is the Power Axe. And he can hold it in either axe mode, as you just saw, or in the gun mode. So you can hold it both ways. And the Blade Blaster, of course, just plugs in right here. So if you're a fan of the Black Ranger, worth taking a look at him. And that's pretty much going to be my recommendation for any of these. If you're a fan of that Ranger or want the whole team, these are definitely worth taking a look at. Wave 1 was kind of hit and miss, and it was a recommendation, but I can definitely recommend all of Wave 2. The Action Heroes are always a pretty solid action figure for their price, and for $12.99, these aren't bad. I wouldn't really pay the $19.99 they were originally, but it was long $14.99 until these came out. So I really wouldn't pay $19.99 for these. $14.99 is okay, but like I said, the only difference between these and the originals are the painted weapons. And so if paying that much extra for painted weapons is kind of a bummer, I'd rather just have these as normal action heroes without the painted weapons, since that's not really a big deal to me. But here is the Power Lance, and yes, as you can see, it does split into two, so he can hold both of those individually, or combine them together to form the longer lance. And that's actually a pretty decent size in comparison to the Ranger. So props to them on that. And moving along to the Yellow Ranger, it uses the same female action hero mold that we started with Super Mega Force. So you do have the rather plump breastises for the figure, and a rather slim design, but that is what we've come to expect with the action heroes, and it doesn't deter from the figure any. It's still definitely posable, and being a female without the skirt, it means that we have a female mold that can actually spread her legs a bit and pose, so that is nice, since I'll be complaining a little bit about Kimberly when we get to her. Having a female mold without the skirt is definitely a nice change of pace. The skirt definitely ruins it on these the action hero mold. For sure. I hope they do something about that eventually in the future. But included with the Yellow Ranger is the Blade Blaster and the two Power Daggers. They do seem a little large. The Power Dagger toys always seem a little large. I don't know if they're just afraid to make them too small or what, but I think the Dragon Dagger is actually smaller than the Power Daggers. So that's kind of obnoxious, but not too bad. She can hold both of them just fine. Like I said, thanks to not having a skirt, she can actually get some action poses going. So that's a nice change of pace. Given's the only one in this wave that I actually feel the need to complain about. A lot of Pink Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Pink Rangers now, are coming with like an arrow accessory to go with the bow, which is fine if she could get in a pose to where it would actually look like she's effectively shooting a bow. You can't get a pose like that with these figures. So really, the arrow accessory is more or less kind of a moot point. Plus, it's a huge arrow. It's a pretty big arrow. But anyway, there really isn't anything to do. You can't really hold it there or anything. You can clip it on one of those, I guess, but that doesn't look right at all. So, ignoring the arrow accessory for now, the power bow itself is nice. I mean, it looks exactly like it does in the show for the most part. So, no complaints with the bow itself, but as with the mold, I was fine with the Yellow Ranger. Yeah, it's a little bit unhumanly slim in some circumstances, but the skirt really kills this mold for sure. You can't really get too wide of a leg spread past that. And you can't get a horizontal or vertical, rather, spread past that. So you're not going to get too many action poses with the Pink Ranger. She just has to look heroic with her bow or something, because that's about all you're going to get with this one, which is definitely a shame. Because overall, I like the mold for sure, but that skirt really needed to be segmented, or kind of the style that the old Disney era figures were, in terms of having them molded into the legs. That's really the only